Welcome, everyone, to Starseed Essence Media. I'm Eva, your host. Tonight on Starseed Essence, we're joined by Michael Forrest, an independent researcher, author, filmmaker, and the founder of Alien Carvings. Michael has documented and been preserving a controversial collection of artifacts that he believes could challenge conventional understanding of humanity. These objects are depicting unusual beings, ancient technology, and scenes that some interpret as evidence of ancient contact with non-human intelligences that have sparked fascination, debate, and skepticism across the world. Tonight, we'll explore how Michael first became involved with these mysterious objects. What evidence has convinced him of their significance? What scientific testing has been performed? And how he has responded to those who remain unconvinced. Michael Forrest, welcome to Starseed Essence Media. Thank you
Thanks for having
coming.
me.
So you just came back from Contact in the Desert. I really wish I could have been there.
It was a great time. Yeah, they did a great job this year.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty. I'm trying to just compact the most information I can into this episode as possible regarding these artifacts and your mission here during this time that we are existing, and disclosure. It's just so much coming out right now.
Yeah.
How did you first become involved with these artifacts?
I didn't believe they were genuine. A friend of mine had gone down to Mexico with an archaeologist named Mark Russell, and they brought him back and had him on Scott Wolter's America Unearthed, and they carbon dated them. And my friend brought a couple of them over to my house and showed them to me. I'm just like, there's no way these would be on my table if they were real. You know, this changes everything. I couldn't get over that fact. And so skepticism really got me involved, I guess.
How long ago was that?
6 years ago.
Okay, so 6 years. What was the very first artifact that you encountered?
It was a small little, just a small tablet from Abuelos, Jalisco, and had a bunch of alien-looking beings on there, you know, just like the emoji that we have on our phones. I mean, same type of face and big almond eyes. So my friend, I collected carvings and rocks and crystals prior. So he was showing me all kinds of opals and different things. And then all of a sudden pulled out one of these, you know.
That's pretty crazy. And you
Yeah.
thought, what in the world? Where did this come from?
That was the thing, you know, I've been to lots of rocks and crystal shows for many, many years. And I've scoured eBay and done things for different things like this, and art specifically. I'm a collector of art. And so to see this was completely something left field. I'd never seen anything like it. Definitely had questions on who was making it, and, you know, where can I get more? I wanted to collect some of it and research it, you know?
I know that initially, whenever we did an interview, you said that you initially called it Alien. It's aliencarvings.com now, and that you thought they were initially aliens, but then as you did research, you kind of changed your tune on that, but you just still kept it as Alien Carvings.
Yeah, I think in the end, I mean, an alien to us is what the emoji looks like. It is what was on, you know, flying around in these saucers. We don't necessarily know they come from a different planet or a different universe, whatever that might be. But we do know that the aliens look similar to this. And I just, you know, through research found stories like, we find traces of the Anunnaki and Egyptian gods like Anubis and Horus and Set. And so seeing these type of things, I obviously dove deep into the stories of these cultures, trying to understand more of what I was seeing illustrated. And that's when I came to the understanding that there was, you know, lots of talk of genetic manipulation and things like the Ajiji species being a slave type species that was replaced, and numerous trials and different species were created after them to get to what they call Adamu. And so it's really, seeing that depicted on the pieces as well was really connect the dots type situation, you know.
That's pretty cool. I have just a few, I'm going to do a little rapid fire along because I want to get as much information as possible out. What convinced you that these objects deserved serious attention?
When I saw the petroglyphs and the cave open up at the 15, 16 foot level, and they worked it down to 20 feet in the ground, and I saw the excise pile of all the waste and dirt and rocks that were separated and bucketed up, you know, at that point, for the 6 or 8 items that were found in the month-long adventure to dig this thing out, that was really the bullet point. Like this needs more attention. There's no question, you know.
Before becoming involved, were you skeptical yourself?
Very, very much. Yeah, I didn't believe it for like 3 years. I would poke. I actually made, not necessarily enemies, but I got into a lot of altercations with different collectors and different people who sell these items just because I would question things to the level and request such, logical evidence. Definitely what I built my entire page on is showing this evidence. And I think it's really important. But at the time, going and getting dig evidence for these items was very forbidden for the people down there and not something that was being posted on the internet.
How many items do you have in the collection so far?
Well, I've handled over 3,500 items personally, but making all my books and doing the collecting I've done. But right now, I probably have close to 1,000 items.
Okay. How many books do you have on this?
7.
Okay, 7. You've written 7 books in a period of 6 years
Yeah,
on
well,
this.
actually, I never wrote any books until I was a believer, and that was part of the reason of writing the books. Was now I've got to document this. I reached out to lots of experts and couldn't get finite people that were interested in doing science. I just had a lot of opinions coming my way, which was really frustrating. So I just chose to document these because I didn't know if I'd ever see, scientific engagement at the academic level in my lifetime. I mean, it could just be roadblocked out, and that's what it felt like when I started. When I first realized this was genuine, I reached out to lots of different universities and labs, and the runaround was extensive. And it's because, if these items are genuine, then having them in my possession could be illegal. I mean, there's legalities here about extracting things if they were part of the pre-Hispanic culture, which, we've gotten letters of clarification from Mexico stating that they do not recognize this as part of that culture. They do sell them legally down there, and I believe that we have a legal ownership. But if my research was to change that, then what? And so that's kind of the question at this point is how does that go into effect?
What was a turning point that made you take them seriously? These items, like the very moment you thought, okay, this is hands down truth, real.
Yeah, well, the petroglyphs was hands down the truth, but I took it seriously before that in terms of research, and I started diving in with, quite a bit of capital of my own to just try to understand. Scott Woltar's show there, America Unearthed, where they carbon dated them, that was a huge, plus in the audience of me saying this could be real. And then Steve Quayle did a documentary, Gen 6 Expeditions down in Mexico, and they went to Tula as well as Lake Quetzal and pulled a lot of things out of the ground, start to finish with radar detectors and GPR and ground penetrating radar. And so seeing that and the effort and the amount of money that was spent to make that documentary, I knew there was probably something true here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're working on a documentary as well, right?
Yep.
I'm
Yep. I
excited.
just actually shot it down at Contact in the desert. It doesn't have to do necessarily with the carvings, but it has to do with the return of the spheres in terms of seeing the sphere come in the government war.gov release. There's videos of these metal spheres flying around, much like the ones they've documented on Skinwalker Ranch. And then also that we see depicted on these pieces all over the place. And also the Boogosphere that crashed in Colombia. So it's kind of just, asking people's opinions and how we should accept this disclosure being is that we're not given a lot of information. It's the government's left us to talk about it. And I think that's what I'm trying to incentivize with the documentary is just let's talk about it.
Yeah, I do feel like that, when we the people come together, that's where the importance of community is in just the disclosure movement here. There is a community. We have to come together with it and use discernment and really question, not just say, "Oh, that's fake," and just brush it off. I know. Look at the research that was done. Like, how much more research can you do to say, "Hey, these artifacts are not fake," and there might
Yeah.
be some floating out there that could be replicas.
There is. I found those, absolutely, but that's the cool part. They were easily distinguishable based on the way that they were made. There's complex geopolymers and skills and techniques that are put into these that you just don't see. I mean, things that I've never seen, to be honest with you. So it's really something once you look with a scanning electron microscope or something at that level of magnification, you can clearly see it.
Yeah, and some of these pieces that you have kind of glow in the dark, they emit like a green luminescence, like a typical glow in the dark color. That's
Yeah,
pretty
well,
cool.
green, blue, yellow, red. We find all these different phosphorescent and luminescent attributes. Some of the pieces have a flashback, like you hit it with a UV light. Once you turn that UV light off, it emits a flash of light back at you. And then there's also the ones like you mentioned that glow green. Literally, you hit them with a light, turn it off, and it's glowing in the dark for a few minutes afterwards. But what was interesting about this is how it was applied to all these different objects. And in some cases, it's looked like it was put on with a brush of some form or some sort of like paint. Others it was like putty into the cracks and crevices that they put into the piece. But there was many different techniques. And what was interesting is the way that the glow in the dark was bonded. It wasn't like a normal paint or something where you would see these type of binders that bind it to the piece. Literally, this you couldn't see. It was fused to the piece, and it's strontium based, aluminum type material. So it's naturally occurring and something that we use for our modern glow in the dark material today. But how it was applied, I think, is really the big ticket because if we were to heat up a material to attach it to quartz crystal, like many of these quartz skulls glow, to get that to bond onto there and to fuse onto there would take high heat. And in this case, that would destroy the glow in the dark properties. So somehow this was applied without that.
Hmm. That's very interesting. Okay, so I'm going to get into the chain of custody, like how where you are holding some of these pieces. So, where specifically did these artifacts originate?
In multiple states in Mexico, primarily my research has entailed Tula Hidalgo and Abuelos, Jalisco. And those are the two locations I've researched the most. But there's also Tabasco, Guerrero, Michoacan, the Veracruz, the Yucatan, and Oaxaca as well, have all had pieces documented or shown to me at least. I haven't been able to fully, because it's an expensive process to be sure about something in this case. You can go down and do a test on a piece, but that's not going to really give you a proper scientific foundation. So it's one at a time at this point.
Who is discovering them or who discovered them?
Yeah, there's been numerous people involved. I work with over 30 different families down there. A lot of them are families that are landowners near some of these archaeological zones. And they have property that butts up to the pyramid sites, and there's a large fence that divides them essentially. So, where they put these fences is just kind of where they guesstimated the boundaries of the main zone would be. And that's what UNESCO and the World Heritage Foundation takes care of and preserves. But there's still, archaeological zones outside of these boundaries. And the Tula was a massive city for the Toltec for many years. And I think there's a lot more buried that goes in every direction from that pyramid site.
Yeah. And these are carbon dating like 12,000 years old, some of the pieces
Yeah.
at least.
Anywhere from 8,000 to, well, we've got 20,000-year-old date that's really, really, in my opinion, accurate because it's from a canopic jar with organic remains in the bottom. And I think that it was sealed when it was found. It's fully documented from start to finish. And then it was dated at, 19,500 years old. That to me is pretty solid. We have a date as old as 37,500 years, but that date, it was off of a resin that bound a book together, and it's a metal book, and that resin could be already ancient when they used it. It could have been some copal sap or something like that that was in the ground for many, many years. So not as strong of a date for me.
Do you know the names of these original finders? I know you said you had like 30 families, but
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it is
I
it
mean,
like has the relationship became personal with these people that are giving these artifacts back and forth? And I know that it's touchy as far as some of the legality stuff, the
it's
loophole.
very touchy on that end. I've seen these guys to get dig videos for me. I know one guy that had one of his molars removed by the cartel because they saw the evidence on his phone. No anesthesia or nothing, just, like, ripped his tooth out of his face. Yeah, I mean, it was disgusting. His face ballooned up, and I never seen anything quite like it, to be honest with you. Like, this was a wake-up call for me at this point, and why the cartel would have, or the mafia, the way they related it was the mafia. So why they would be interested in these pieces or the archaeological finds themselves is really, another question.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is history in making on a planet that we all live on, and I feel like there has to be some sort of I'm glad that, there's safekeepers, I guess you would say, for some of these artifacts, especially the ones that are not being sold online. Because I know you said before, there's absolutely pieces that you would not put up for sale because of you don't know what they're doing. The technology. Well, you do probably do know what they're doing, but the technology's involved in it.
Yeah, the what if, definitely you wouldn't wanna sell just any piece to anyone in this case, and that's really where it's been, like, a lot of the people I've sold to, I sold some pieces on eBay, but I try to limit that to, small little pendants and, little tiny statues, stuff that I can kinda understand more for sure, not large pieces, like you say, of technology with magnetic, prediction devices and Ouija boards and that sort of stuff definitely could be potentially misused, or something. I've seen people try to use these items for, rituals and things of that nature, and bad things have happened to these people specifically, and I mean, it could just be coincidence, but you really have to wonder because to go from here all the way to here in a matter of a very short period of time, and the reasons why was one thing to make you scratch your head for sure.
Yeah. I know that you said too, that some people wouldn't cover this topic because of you know, that all of that we just discussed involved with it. There's a lot of people kind of not afraid, but they're kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I want to cover that or not because A, is it true? Most people are like, but then you've done all like how much
The true part, in my opinion, is a complete brainwash for our to belittle this. And the reason I say that is because you take one of the most popular alien shows out there, the Ancient Aliens series, and you look at what they say after every single thing that they report on, and that it's an ancient astronaut theory, meaning they don't know if it's true or not. And they report on it day after day after day. And when like Giorgio Tsoukalos came out against this and won't talk about this type of stuff, it really brings suspicion in my eyes because they clearly talk about theories all day long.
Yeah, that just and that
Right.
makes something that you can like, why? Yeah, I don't understand.
Well, and there is levels of concern in terms of, there's been a lot of religious wars and a lot of things to do with technology, missing scientists recently and stuff like that is what I'm referring to. So the capabilities of this civilization, the fact that Boogosphere also dated 12,500 years old in the same period of time, it could very well be that they had technology that we should be scared of. And there's,
Yeah,
the Pope coming out against AI. There's a bunch of stuff against AI here recently on a level even from the creators of these things like, hey, we should, I believe it was the Claude, I can't think of their parent company, but the people who make Claude, they came out and said, if we continue at this, like it's going to be able to design itself and we won't be able to stop it type situation. So the
yeah,
technology's crazy.
yeah, and it's this it has to do with a lot of timeline stuff, of course, and some people do believe that the whole world that we live in is run through this supreme AI running the simulation. And it does have to do with like 12,000-year cycles. And you
Yeah.
hear that across the board in a lot of different ways. You hear that 12,000-year cycle term.
No. Yeah, the fact that Boogosphere came out and fell into our lap, and then the other fact that they allow Jaime Maussan to have it and to research it. Very interesting. This could be something that if it was drilled into could be very dangerous. We don't know, but the what if factor there should be enough to warrant a closer look by the government, in my opinion. I mean, they shouldn't keep it a secret, and they should take it legitimately to research it, in my opinion. So that's another real big strange factor. That sphere has gotten very interesting. I mean, the inside, they did initial CT scans of like there was a ball with what looked like a horn or something coming off of it, or a vessel of some form, and
Yeah.
and that was there in the initial CT scans, no longer there inside of that.
Hmm. I think it's somehow connected with consciousness or something.
I have no
Well,
idea. It's so crazy. Yeah.
I know. As far as with the artifacts that you have and that you've seen, how many hands do you think have the artifacts passed through before they came to you?
Depends on the piece. I bought some pieces early on, especially where I had no idea where they were coming from. That was the goal of buying the pieces, was to try to get more information about that and to try to work my way up that. that totem pole. The people you may know on Facebook became very interesting once I added a couple of these guys as friends. And so I think that's been a big push. But yeah, I've got pieces that I personally like had my team scan with GPR, found anomalies, dug underneath, hit ground floors, removed the ground floor, found objects, and then shipped them right away. I mean, they're still covered in the dirt that was in the video of them being removed. So
It's very interesting. How many of these artifacts have been excavated under the controlled or under controlled archaeological conditions?
as far as control, like actual real archaeologists going down there and pulling these out, I don't think any archaeologist has ever put their name on it other than Mark Russell.
Okay. I wonder why not.
Well, because you can't just go dig in Mexico legally without certain permits and proper. So one group that I do know, they got a permit to dig on their land and they knew what was under there, but they just got a normal permit to dig for like a septic tank, for instance. And then they find this ridiculous archaeological find. And so then, they call up the INAH to say, "Hey, we found an archaeological find," and they show them pictures of it and they're like, "No, this is modern. Someone buried that there. We're not coming out for that." This was like a 2,000-pound sarcophagus and massive tablets, and then they wrote a paper or an article in the local paper there because many of the people had saw it. My post went, I think, 50 million viral. My buddy's post with it went 40 or 50 million viral as well. And so there was a lot of people questioning the INAH and the government down in Mexico. And they wrote an article stating that they came in and questioned people and looked through the entire archaeological zone and didn't see any evidence of this being excavated there, which was never the case. We never said it was in the archaeological zone. And the people that they questioned are not going to come forward and say that they just pulled a map, like this is
Yeah. They're
not their
scared.
business, unfortunately. So it's really it seems like something that they're trying to not allow to come out.
Have independent laboratories examined these artifacts?
Yeah, quite a few. I would say dozens at this point. We've got numerous PhDs who have endorsed the project now. We've got a PhD over in Israel that's doing a lot of really, really good testing. We've got a whole entire team of multiple PhDs. The guys that found the stuff underneath the Great Pyramid or the Pyramid of Khafre there with the SAR scans. They're involved in this. So that project there in Italy has over, I think, 400 pieces of documentation coming out in the near future with a documentary and I believe a published paper as well.
What materials are these artifacts made from? I know you talked about it earlier, but like,
They're made from a
are
lot
they?
of different things. Like some
Yeah.
of
Are
them
you?
are carved crystals, quartz and aventurine, jade, amethyst. Find a lot of different variations, a lot of calcite, green banded calcite or travertine or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of, I'm just looking around the room here, but the one that you mentioned is the geopolymer, which there's 6 or 8 different kinds of this really advanced geopolymer, which essentially is just crushed up rocks and minerals that are glued back together or cast kind of like you would with concrete or clay or something like that. In this case, it's a process in which it recrystallizes, and that's the real interesting part is the way it's layered and put in there. It's very advanced, kind of like the tiles that would go on our space shuttle or something like that. They're very advanced geopolymers that were created or ceramic pieces that were created to resist that heat in a specific way. And that's the thing. Some of these pieces have what we noticed is really high heat resistance.
Wow. You said they have undergone dating analysis, and some of them are from anywhere from 8,000 up to 19,000 years old that you've studied. Have geologists studied them?
Yep. Yeah. Scott Walter here, the host of America Unearthed, he's a forensic geologist. And so he was probably the first geologist to study them. And since then, there's been a few independent geologists that have done work mostly on the geopolymer and looking at the material science, but not necessarily on site as much. Something that, again, it's like going down there and doing studies on the holes and taking tests can put their career in jeopardy for not filing the proper paperwork or going through the proper channels to do things legally.
Have any of the people that have been researching this publicly endorse their authenticity?
Well, I mean, yeah, the like JJ and Desiree Hertok had me come and speak at their event. They're both, multiple degrees each, and they said that these pieces were the origin of Nephilim and a time where there was a different hierarchy of beings that were being worshipped, and that these were the remnants of that civilization. That's a pretty big one. And then Vanessa Meligari, who's an anthropologist, spent many months on the ground in Mexico last summer, did a lot of anthropological work for that Italian team that I was mentioning earlier. And she came forth on the Jaime Maussan show publicly and said that these pieces are authentic.
Oh, that's pretty cool. What do you notice that critics usually say about these artifacts?
There's a lot of critics for sure, especially on the internet. The comment section is it's a wild west. A lot of people saying it's AI. A lot of people saying that that was staged or this is fake. Very one liner comments. Not very many people try to argue it with science and peer review, and that's something I've really grown thick skin about. Is a lot of this is paid influencer bots, stuff like that that go in there. They pay $10 and they get 50 comments on my post. They can type in whatever they want, or they can have the AI do it based on what it feels. And I think that's where a lot of these one-liner comments come from, because, I'll respond to these people. I'll spend my whole Saturday sitting there responding to all these comments. And very, very few of them ever have anything to say after the first comment.
Wow, that is interesting. I did discover the other day somebody messaged me and they said, "Are you messaging me on X on Twitter?" And I said, "No, that's not me." And I said, "What account is it?" It is an Eva XO. So if anybody out there sees Eva XO, that is not me. I did some investigation and there was like hundreds of different accounts under Eva XO. Like it was all the Eva bot. It was like,
Yeah.
I don't even know, like endless amount of different accounts with people that had subscribed to this bot. So,
Yeah.
but it's not me. I promise.
It's really corrupt the way social media is handled. It's used as a tool of leverage to be able to control the narrative, kind of like they used mass media to do for many years. This is just an evolution of that, I feel, in many cases. And that's probably why we see similar channels of money and similar people at the top of this type of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's real critics out there too, people with real degrees and people without. Giorgio Tsoukalos, as I mentioned earlier, he came forward after one of our discoveries and posted our content on his channel and said, with 110% certainty that this was a hoax. And he based it based on the erosion. However, for him to make a judgment scientifically on erosion would really mean that he has some sort of degree or has worked with a scientist that he would be quoting in that process. And in this case, a bachelor of sportscasting is coming forward trying to give their opinion on their public profile of something that they really don't have any expertise to even mention.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of concerns, with in ethical concerns and then spiritual concerns and also different countries involved and yeah, the digs involved. I know there's a lot of concerns regarding that. You said, now we did talk about in the beginning of this episode that you did notice that there are some fakes out there, like being sold online. What can you tell the difference between what's yours versus the fakes?
Well, I mean, some of them, they look at the surface level very promising. I mean, I've even posted some of them, bought some of them in the past, and was, rudely awoken when I started to go in there and look at it. The things that really brought it forward for me was seeing them come broken. These pieces would come sometimes broken, and the insides of them, the type of material that it was absolutely not the same as the ones that I'd seen through the dig videos and that were documented properly. And so those gave us reason in the lab to start doing more investigations through the scanning electron microscope and looking at these materials. And yeah, it's definitely something that you can see. You can see the tooling marks and how they were carved versus, in this case, we believe they were sculpted wet. A lot of these pieces made of that geopolymer, at least, and maybe even some of the crystal pieces, which, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, this geopolymer recrystallizes. And so it's very possible that they were able to manufacture crystals to some degree based on what we see and how some of these things are. I mean, it would takes such a master craftsman to make some of these quartz pieces specifically, or these aventurine pieces. It's really, really crazy. Same even with the alabaster stuff. There's alabaster pieces with negative space and certain things that, this would chip and crack for most people time and time again. And these pieces aren't just formed into that, but they're also tattooed on the surface with, images and language and all kinds of drawings that again would cause chipping and cracking very commonly in something super soft like alabaster.
That's interesting. Now, I know that whenever I talk to people about this, they ask me, well, why are those artifacts like that being sold online? So I'm gonna ask you that. Why are they some of them being sold?
Yeah, well, I started out, I never sold a single one. I collected about 250 of these pieces. The documentary happened, and they showed these petroglyphs to me, and all of a sudden I had a fire lit up underneath me, but I didn't have the funding. I mean, I just literally like put money on my credit cards, and I run a business up here in Washington, and so I was starting to, negate certain things in my business to try to balance this load. And at some point, I just had to sell some. Like the economy really took a hit over the last 4 years, and that also changed the demographics of my company, and so I had no choice really other than to sell them. And what I found, I sold some just to get by on a couple occasions. And then I met these collectors and these other people who were like-minded, who also had passionate care about this topic, and so it became something of really good fortune in the topic itself, because seeing all these people now involved, I mean, there's probably 30 or 40 different accounts that are documenting these things and researching these things. And so it's been a definite drop in the pool.
Yeah, I know you've done a lot of work on this. And do you plan on opening up some sort of like exhibit where people can view like the big pieces that you talked about that may be some sort of technology?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, it's something I'm actively pursuing right now. Well, we've got a good friend that's opened up a museum for these pieces down in Florida, and he's got about 50 pieces in there, and so I'm really gauging a lot of how his success is and what's good and what's bad about that. There's a lot of concern, obviously, with putting these on display. To do so in the right fashion with the right security and the right mindset, I think is really important. So I'm not a museum guy. I've never owned one. I don't have any clue about that space or that retail type environment to make it make sense without offending people. I'm not trying to gatekeep or, make millions of dollars off admission. But at the same point, like, I don't want the company to fail or go dramatically into debt over doing this to where, now I've got to sell more pieces or whatever to make it. So it's again just a slow and steady process. I wanted to get my books done and then get the science all allocated. Once we had all the concrete science, there was published papers, which we have two of now, then it'll be a lot more stable to do something like that, I think.
Yeah, and I think, you're doing a lot of work speaking about this and you're doing other interviews with people. You're trying to get this out any which way. Like that, I believe it's good for people to see these artifacts. It might trigger some memories within you, like deep memories that's in your subconscious. And just like with everything, like even our DNA, the way everybody's getting their DNA, like 23andMe, Ancestry, our DNA is only going back 200 years on that. But there's so much of a bigger picture of what's going on right now. It's beyond 200 years. It's beyond
Yeah.
12,000 years or 24,000 years. There's like if you pan out to look, like this is like a cycle. It almost looks like what's going on now, except for in a different way. It's like it happened. It
Bingo.
happened before, and it's happening again. And here's the
Yeah.
clock it's striking 12. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It is. And who's been involved with that and who's been giving our species technology and stuff. If you look through the different cultures and the different records, it lines up with what we're seeing on these pieces very vividly. And the same beings, same characters, same stories. I've been working with Agni Sartori. She is the one who translated the Bugosphere. There was some Proto Sanskrit on there that she was able to translate. And so she's actually, because of being down there in Mexico, taken interest in this topic and recently opened a museum down there in Teotihuacan with David Roldan, who's another author of books on these pieces and the Bugosphere. He's also the chief researcher of the Bugosphere. And so she's been giving, she hasn't spent a ton of time yet, but her time that she has on translating some of these pieces I mean, it definitely blows AI out of the water hearing the way she phonetically goes through this and creates this translation. And it's
That's great.
music to my ears, you know?
Yeah. So you said there's a museum in Florida. Where at in Florida?
It's a Pete Beach, kind of by Tampa there or Sarasota.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, what evidence would still be required before making a conclusion that these are 100% real? I know that there is all this evidence, but people still say it's fake. It doesn't
And
matter,
it's the
like,
same thing
all,
with the disclosure stuff. Like,
yeah,
the government's releasing the files, and now it's like, "Oh, this is blue beam. This is to distract us from the Epstein file." Like, there's never any evidence that's good enough to completely control people's beliefs, and I think there might be a purpose for that. You know, keeping the question in our minds allows us to stay motivated and to stay continually active on the topic, and that's something that I don't know if it would die completely, but it would definitely a lot of people would just know now. So that might be part of the reason why the government's not telling us there's little green aliens. They're letting us decide for ourselves, much like the freedom of religion that we have. And this could very well fall right along those lines. For me, the evidence that I would like to see going forward, we have some XRD testing coming, more stuff on the material science and just how far that goes. Um, as far as is that going to make people believe? I think if one of these published papers gets into the peer review status and gets published by a journal, and there's scientists that would be your mainstream, you know, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, for instance, he was against UFOs and wouldn't talk about this topic for years, and then all of a sudden the disclosure stuff comes out, and now he's actively talking about it. And I think
right.
that could very well happen with this. And as those type of personalities start to accept it when the president starts talking about it like he has been in some degree. However, having aliens.gov for illegal aliens was probably a big stab to the disclosure industry and the seriousness involved with it. But either way, it's at least being talked about to some degree. And I think that as it continues will help saturate the belief.
Yep. So with your documentary, how far along are you in? Is that begun yet? How
No,
far
I
along?
I I finished filming on it. I've got a couple narrations that I'm gonna do right here sitting in this spot, and I'm going to, it's all in 3D VR 180, so this will be an immersive documentary, kind of the first of its kind in the disclosure space, and it will probably be done, I would guess, by the end of June. I'm working on a book right now as well, the Book of Enoch. I'm re-releasing the actual book with a bunch of narration and pictures from all these pieces that go along with the story so people can kind of see the relation firsthand. And so
That is
just kind
awesome.
of juggling between those. And, I'm not the best editor. I never was a video filmmaker prior to starting, with social media and things like that. So doing a full scale documentary, especially in 3D, I'm taking my time and really trying to make the most out of it.
And for viewers that may not know what that means you can put a little headset on and see it like you're immersed in it. So that's
Yep.
gonna be really cool.
Yeah, it's
That's
an
gonna be very cool.
8K, so it's really, really high quality. And in the
Yeah.
Vision or the Meta Quest, you can literally, yeah, look around. It's amazing. As soon as I saw this technology, I had to have the ability to create it because it took me,
Yeah.
having my videos of my dogs and my kids like this is amazing. Just even the, year that I've had it, I can see so much growth in my son and my dog that's no longer with us. So, that sort of stuff, it really is going to change the way we view memories for sure.
Yeah, that's a very cool technology that we have that a lot of people don't utilize. I'm glad you're
Yeah.
doing that. I
It's
can't
ahead
wait to
of its time. Yeah.
yeah,
The
for
the
real.
hardware, just to export all the video, I had about 46 minutes of video I took down there in Contact in the Desert, and it took over a week to export that, and that's with, like, the fastest Mac you can buy.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. And if anybody wants to look at like some clips that are 8K, they can go to your YouTube channel. I'm gonna link everything below.
Yeah.
And
Yep, we
if
have
they
a
want to
few on there now.
put the headset on, you can experience it now just for a little clip. So it's gonna be cool to have a whole documentary like that.
Yeah. I'm headed down to, Texas at the end of the month to film for Forbidden Relics Volume 2, and they're also making a documentary on my story. There's a really high-end film producer, director that's picked up the project, and And so that's going to be really exciting. And we're going to kind of be filming how I make these books and how we go through the 3D process and all of this in the documentary just to show you know, the
Sure.
process.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm excited to see that, and I'm glad that that you came on and talked to me about this because it's kind of like for me whenever I see this artifacts, it's triggering like I don't know. I feel like it's triggering memories for me, like I don't know, some kind of subconscious, like whoa, like I can look at it and I'm like, I remember that in a way. It's very weird.
If we're
Uh,
really in this cycle of reincarnation and we're all connected through this type of entropy or however it is, there's a real plausibility that there is memories triggered. This was probably a really important time for the soul because of we find a lot of depictions of the sacrifice and maybe some type of control. We find this computer chip that's on the boogosphere all over the skulls and things that we find down there, even the animals, which is really interesting. So there could be a level of embedded memories or connection to our consciousness that is ingrained into us forever.
think so. It's mind blowing. I mean, it can be mind blowing. So I think we all have to kind of be grounded through this and do question. I think it's good to say, okay, is this real or fake? Let's find out the evidence here. And you're somebody that's written 6 books on this. All of these experiments that have done, all the people talking about it with the letters behind their name to prove that they're, genuine people.
Yeah.
But still, people are going to say, I don't know if I believe that. It's just, I don't know why, but it's true.
I
That's
didn't
what happened.
believe it for 3 years, and it took me deep diving so many things that I just know that if people see it, like you said, it can trigger something, and maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, maybe they shift their view at that point. The shift here should not be done overnight. We should never trust something this important and this big with one video or one artifact. I mean, this has literally changed my entire faith in God and religion and everything else in terms and my viewpoints on certain things and why they are the way they are. So I think it's a beautiful unfolding, but that's what it is it's like unfolding the flag. You can't just, throw it out there. It needs to be done with respect.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And grace and just groundedness
Yeah,
with it.
100%.
We are getting up on our time here. I know we unpacked a lot here. I tried to get some of the most, questions that people would talk to me about whenever I talk to them about your stuff and show them, like, look at this. Like, I don't know. I mean,
Absolutely.
even some people that are, they haven't done research, but their initial response is, I don't know about that.
I know. I wagered
It's mind
$5,000
blowing.
on a bet. Like, I could not believe it. It just would not compute. I could not plant that seed at the time. Like I said, it took 3 years of constantly asking the questions in my mind, and even then, I mean, there's still a lot of stuff to be researched and understood with this topic that I don't have the answers to, you know?
Yep. Imagine a respected team of archaeologists, geologists, and museum curators were watching this interview right now. What evidence would you place on the table today and say, start here?
I would absolutely place the material science of the geopolymer. I would probably use pieces from Abuelos, Jalisco, because it's so obvious and it's so uh, there's really not anything that could argue it, in my opinion, at this point. That it's not something that we've ever made as our species that I know of. I mean, we've got all these different types of concretes, but it's kind of like Roman concrete with Hadrian's Wall, and I'll use that as an example because I think it's really valid. We know they created this massive stone wall over there in Europe. We have no clue still today the recipe for that concrete. I mean, our roads break down after a couple of years or whatnot. These roads have been there for thousands of years and they're still in condition that's, I mean, unbelievable. So that the geopolymer knowledge of our ancient history is pretty clear that they knew something that we don't now. And that's still the case. And I believe these pieces show that exact reference.
Yeah, and they're beautiful to look at.
Yeah,
So, the purpose of this conversation isn't to tell people what to believe, it's to encourage critical thinking, curiosity, and open investigation. Extraordinary claims deserve careful examination. Whether these artifacts prove to be authentic, misunderstood, or something else entirely, the search for truth is what matters. Thank you for watching Starseed Essence Media, the portal between worlds. I'm Eva, your host, and Michael Forrest, thank you so much for coming on from your aliencarvings.com. I will link your stuff below and tie in some artifacts that are for sale too, with links below if anybody. And please comment to the audience, make comments, ask questions, and remember to take a breath. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.